Matthew Carrabs and Doug Caldwell, yes to LRT in Hamilton, respecting LRT.
I'm talking. It's a joint effort. Good afternoon, Madam Deputy Mayor, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Thank you for agreeing to hear us on the subject of LRT. It seems that at every turn, opponents of the LRT project will raise up a call to scrap the whole thing. We think it's past time for that consideration, and it's time to keep moving ahead. I'd like to start by explaining how I got here. Matthew first asked me to help him with some social media for his community advocacy work. Then he told me it was about yes to LRT Hamilton. I was a little put off. Living in Stony Creek, about 5 miles from the traffic circle, I was not a fan. But I dug into some of the facts and I tried to discern if I were being fair. I had heard that the plan was to use the occasion of tearing up the streets for LRT to upgrade all the underground infrastructure, which would have needed to be upgraded anyway. That made sense to my practical side, but it wasn't enough to convince me. Then my conscience kicked in, and I reflected on how I'm not in this alone. What's good just for me isn't the only question to think about. I don't expect the LRT to be built and operated without some additional cost that will eventually land on my tax bill. But I have rarely been called upon to sacrifice much for the next generation. Certainly not the way my parents made their sacrifices in wartime, or the Stelco strikers made their sacrifices just after the war. So now I say yes to LRT in Hamilton, not for myself, but for the future. And to speak for the future, here is my friend, Matthew Carrabs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Today I'm here to try to convince you to vote yes to LRT. The LRT will change the way we move around Hamilton. I know many of you are in support, but some of you have your doubts. Some people think anyone living away from the LRT route is opposed to the project because it won't help them. Well, it isn't about themselves, it's about all of us working and living together. I live in Winona, but I care about people living downtown. My grandmother lives near the traffic circle, and the LRT will indeed help her. Her car is getting old, and maybe by the time we have the LRT, she won't need to buy a new car, which will save her tons. Another thing about the LRT, it will relieve pollution and congestion by providing a comfortable and reliable alternative to driving. The LRT could take thousands of cars off the road. Having an efficient way to get around the city without contributing too much pollution and congestion is quite important to me. We can't just keep adding more cars, buses, and parking lots to our crowded downtown. An LRT getting people in and out of the city center is a solution lots of communities have embraced in places like Calgary, Stockholm, and Edmonton. Like the backbone of a person, the LRT line will connect our city's different parts and give us a closer feeling of community. In my school, we learn about community, people living and working together in harmony, people who are connected with each other and God. One thing that helps people get around, connect with each other is being able to get around. The LRT won't solve all of our transit problems, but it will take some cars off the road and encourage more of us to use public transit. Right now, I know that people in Winona, like me and people in Dundas, don't feel much like we are in the same community. The project being reviewed today does not include Winona or Dundas, but we are on the master plan for Hamilton Transit. As our whole transit system gets stronger and stronger, starting with the new LRT, our connections will also go stronger and stronger. These strong connections will help us build a stronger Hamilton. Of course, this won't happen overnight, but you gotta start somewhere. And about why a teenager from Winona would care about the west of Hamilton, well, it's not just about me, it's about all of you, Hamilton. It takes a leap of faith to get on board with a project this big. So I'm a believer. How about you? Thank you.
Well done.
you.
Well done, Matthew. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
I do have a speakers list. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Brenda Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. And just let my colleagues know that Matthew sent me a very respectful, articulate email regarding this issue. So I really want to thank you, Matthew. We had a couple of emails going back and forth, and you said, I'll see you on the 28th. So, Matthew, I'd really like to extend the invitation for you to come back someday, and you and I can spend more time together and talk about this issue as well as other issues, because I'd really like to hear more from you. Thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you.
Councillor Matthew Green.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you, to say that not only do I think you'll be back in this council presenting, but I could see maybe 10 or 15 years down the line you sitting at one of these tables, Matthew. Yeah.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your enthusiasm, and I have to say I've watched your advocacy online, your video productions, everything that you've done has been absolutely top-notch, and I wanted to thank you for having the courage to come here today. It should be noted, Madam Deputy Mayor, that our mayor, Mr. Fred Eisenberger, has the ability to write an absence note if your teachers are questioning your day away from school. And lastly, if I could just borrow words from my councillor colleague, Ms. Brenda Johnson, you put the win in Winona. Hear, hear. Thank you so very much. And if I could just extend comment to Doug for one moment, the points that you raised, sir, regarding future generations really struck home for me. And in particular, because I should say as an observation, not as a way to disparage anybody in opposition, the vast majority of opposition has been from an older generation. I can honestly say that it has been from a generation that perhaps might not see this project realized in its fullest potential, and perhaps might not have, the ability to do what you've done, which is reflect on the decisions that are made here and the investments that are made here in future generations. So what an incredible and appropriate presentation to have this intergenerational, intersectional, and geographic approach to support of LRT. I thank you for that. Matthew, I look forward to voting for you one day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor Eisenberger.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think not only is he going to get an absence, I'm going to hire him as our chief spokesperson for LRT. I mean, in one presentation, I have to be honest, in one presentation, I think you said the very essence of what LRT is all about. And that is not easy to do. And so I want this recorded, and I want this clip, and we're going to use this clip, with your permission, as often as we can to explain to people what the essence of LRT is all about. It's not about individual communities, it's about us collectively. I think that was your message, Matthew, and that is exactly what we're talking about. So good for you. I look forward to sharing this clip with the broader community. And as Matthew said, to see the intergenerational cooperation here and understanding this is about building a city for the future, not just for today, but for 20 or 30 years from now, when you'll be old enough to be mayor and wise enough already, that you'll be working in a city that is built for you, not for those of us that may not be here or won't be participating in the same way. So, well done, Matthew. I look forward to sharing this clip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Matthew. And Doug, we have, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm going to have a question, but I might have a brief comment, so hopefully you won't cut me off this time. So, Councillor Matthew, well done. I was telling Councillor Brenda Johnson when you're speaking, he's going to be competition for you someday. So you clearly have the skill set required to do that. And Doug, I don't know if you remember when the 401 was built. I know I was about Matthew's age at the time. I can remember very similar discussions. Do you recall that?
Thank you for the question. I recall the GO train starting, and if this were longer, it would have included wondering if skeptics had asked, why are we putting this transportation process together? Got me home from university because I didn't have a car yet. So I remember the type of situation, yeah.
It is, and it is all about the future, because I remember Matthew's age at the dinner table, all the discussion was about, why is the province building this 4-lane controlled access highway from Windsor through to Montreal It'll never be used, and of course, today is the engine that drives the province. And so it is about the future, and I think, Matthew, doing this presentation probably accentuates that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers. Thank you very much.